Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving deep into a book that is, well, it's essential, but it's also harrowing. 12 Years a Slave, the memoir of Solomon Northup.
Yeah, published way back in 1853, right when things were really heating up before the Civil War. It gave people this unprecedented look firsthand at what slavery was actually like in the Deep South.
And for this deep dive, we've pulled together quite a bit. We're looking at how people react to it today, through Goodreads reviews.
Right. Plus historical context, Wikipedia helps there. But crucially, we've gone straight to the source itself. Lots of excerpts, even scanned pages from the original 1853 Project Gutenberg ebook.
Seeing those actual scanned pages, it just adds something, doesn't it? A real connection.
It really does.
So our mission here is to use all this to go beyond just, telling the story again. We want to pull out the key insights, understand why Northup's story still hits so hard.
Yeah, what it tells us about the system, about human resilience, the fight for freedom. We'll trace his whole journey.
From being a free man to unimaginable bondage, and then back again, following his own words.
And to really get the horror of what he lost, we have to start with who Solomon Northup was before. The sources, they paint a pretty clear picture of a full life, a free life in New York State.
Exactly. He was born free. His father, Mintus Northup, had been enslaved but was emancipated. Solomon, he built a life for himself.
He was skilled, wasn't he? Farming, working on the Champlain Canal, transporting timber. Resourceful, too, bought his own horses, equipment.
Yeah, this wasn't someone on the margins. He was a working man. He had agency.
And more than that, a family man. Married to Anne, 3 kids, Margaret, Elizabeth, and Alonzo.
Right, settled in places like Saratoga Springs, Kingsbury, Sandy Hill. The sources really emphasize this. He wasn't just an individual. He was part of a community, part of a family.
And his view on slavery, even then, as a free man, it's important. He talks about knowing he had the same feelings, the same intelligence as white men.
So he just couldn't grasp how laws or even religion could possibly justify owning people.
Right. He even mentions meeting enslaved people from the South who were visiting Saratoga with their masters and telling them, look for your chance, try to get free.
Wow. Having no idea.
No idea what that struggle would mean for him personally. Which brings us to the kidnapping, the event that just shattered everything.
It happened so fast. March 1841, Saratoga Springs. He didn't have steady work right then.
And he meets these 2 men, Brown and Hamilton. Seem friendly enough.
They offered him a job, right, playing the violin.
Yeah, for a musician it sounded good. Join a circus troupe heading south.
He saw it as just a temporary thing, earn some cash, be back soon.
The sources say he didn't even write to his wife. Just grabbed his violin, a change of clothes, figured it'd be quick.
So the journey starts. Albany, New York City, Philly, Baltimore.
And then Washington, D.C. And a key detail here, the sources point this out. He had his free papers with him. Legal proof he was free.
But they meant nothing in the end.
Absolutely nothing. The turning point was in Washington. They went to see General Harrison's funeral pageant.
A big public event.
Yeah. And afterwards, he says he suddenly got incredibly sick, this terrible thirst.
They let him off, supposedly to get medicine.
And that was it. He became insensible the next thing he knew.
He wakes up alone, in chains, in the dark.
In a slave pen. William's slave pen, right there in Washington, D.C. The description is chilling, this small masonry cell, 12 by 12 feet.
Barred window. And the yard outside.
Surrounded by this high wall, 10, 12 feet. Built, as Northup put it, so the outside world couldn't see the human cattle inside.
That detail, the wall, it says so much, hiding the reality even in the Capitol.
Exactly. It wasn't just ownership, it was concealment. And from that cell, he's thrown right into the machinery of the slave trade. Birch and Radburn take him from Williams's pen.
And the people he meets there. The sources are heartbreaking. Eliza arriving with her kids, Randall and Emily.
Oh, yeah. Her despair is just palpable, knowing they'd likely be separated. And Emily, described as just 7 or 8, light-skinned, beautiful.
Shows how the system just didn't care about innocence, status, anything.
Nothing. They were loaded onto the brig Orleans, heading for New Orleans. Conditions below deck, you can imagine. Treated like cargo.
He was made steward, overseeing the cooking.
Yeah, with a few others. Scorched cornmeal coffee, hoe cake, bacon. Eaten with their fingers, he points out. No plates. Basic dignity denied.
And there was an escape attempt on the ship.
Right. With Arthur and Robert, 2 other freemen, they planned to seize the ship. A desperate move.
But it failed.
Yeah, not because they were caught, but because of a smallpox outbreak. Robert tragically died from it.
God, even disease worked against them.
But amidst that, there was this tiny glimmer. He met a sailor, Manning.
A kind sailor, apparently.
Yeah, Northup confided in him, told him his story, and Manning actually agreed to help him write a letter.
To Henry B. Northup back in New York.
Right, to be mailed when they got to New Orleans. Hugely risky for Manning.
So they arrive in New Orleans, taken to another slave pen, Theophilus Freeman's.
And the sale process, the sources describe it step by step. Utterly dehumanizing.
Cleaned up, dressed, made to exercise.
Inspected like livestock. Buyers feeling their muscles, checking hands, teeth, turning them around, asking about skills.
And scars were bad, right? Hurt the sale price.
Exactly. Seen as a sign of being troublesome, resisting. Freeman was asking $1,500 for Northup, who he now called Platt.
Highlighting his health, intelligence, musical talent, anything to boost the price.
Other sales happened. David and Caroline sold together, thankfully. Levy sold while angry.
And then Eliza, Emily, Harry, and Solomon as Platt sold as a group to William Ford.
But even that didn't stop the cruelty. Eliza's story, it just wrenches your gut.
Separated from Emily immediately,
Yep.
even though they went to the same master.
Yes. Freeman just dismissed her pleas, called Emily property. That moment, it just sums up the absolute inhumanity of it all.
So from the auction block, he's thrown into plantation life. And the sources show a real contrast early on. Different masters, different levels of cruelty, I guess.
Right. His first master, William Ford, he's described as relatively kind, saw slaves as fellow mortals, read the Bible to them.
And Northup noticed that this leniency actually made people work more willingly.
Yeah, kind of counterintuitive, maybe. Ford even valued Solomon's intelligence. He suggested a better way to transport lumber using Indian Creek and Bayou Boeuf, and Ford listened.
Shows that maybe individual character mattered a tiny bit, but always within that brutal system.
Always constrained. But then Ford had money problems.
And Northup gets transferred to John M. Tebeats.
Yeah, and Tebeats is the complete opposite. Small, crabbed, spiteful, ignorant. Nobody liked him.
Conflict started almost right away, didn't it?
Yes, over some nails. Tebeats tried to whip him, but Solomon, he fought back.
Actually whipped Tebeats himself.
He did. Saved only because the overseer, Chapin, stepped in. But Tebeats came back with help.
Tied him up. And there's another fight later. Much worse.
Oh, yeah. Hatchet. Broad axe involved. A literal fight for his life. His reflection on that is so powerful. Life is dear to every living thing. The worm will struggle for it.
That basic instinct to survive no matter what.
Exactly. He also worked for a man named Tanner briefly.
The one who twisted scripture.
That's him. Used Luke 12.47 about being beaten with stripes to justify whipping. Shows how deep the corruption went.
But the one who really defines cruelty in the narrative is Edwin Epps.
Epps, yeah. The sources call him a nigger breaker. Known for it.
Described as drunk a lot, violent, greedy. Slaves were just chattel, personal, property no better than animals except for their value.
Life under Epps was just relentless work. Cotton, corn, sugar. 360 days a year, the sources say.
And the lash was constant.
Constantly. Flying from morning until night. Overseers, drivers pushing a pace set by the fastest worker. Fall behind, you get whipped.
Food was bad. Basic necessities had to be earned on the side.
Right. Wormy bacon, cornmeal, no utensils unless you could somehow get them on Sundays.
And Northup became a driver himself for Epps. That must have been awful.
Horrible position. Forced to carry a whip. The sources describe how he had to fake whipping people when Epps was watching.
And the others played along. Patsy, Uncle Abram.
Yeah, they collaborated to make it look real, protecting each other however they could. Epps's violence was unpredictable too. Northup says he nearly cut his throat once in a drunken rage.
Were there escape attempts?
Oh, yeah, desperate ones. Wiley tried, got caught by dogs and controllers, whipped, then whipped again by Epps, even though he had a pass.
Nellie hid in a corn crib. Celeste, who could pass for white, tried the swamp but got scared back by animals.
Just shows how tight the control was, how few options there were.
But even in all that darkness, there were these small moments. Respite, culture. Sundays offered a slight change.
And Christmas. The sources detail the celebrations. Feasts, new clothes, red was a favorite color apparently. And dancing.
And this is where Solomon's violin becomes so important.
Hugely important. He was the old bull of Bayou Boeuf, they called him.
Playing got him out of field work sometimes.
Yeah, and access to other plantations, playing for white folks, earning little bits of money, picayunes. But more than that, it was emotional survival.
He called it his companion, his friend.
Exactly. singing a song of peace, offering consolations, and the dancing itself, tearing down, shuffling, patting for rhythm. It shows this incredible resilience, creating moments of joy and community. The violin was a lifeline.
But then there's the story of Patsy. It's just devastating. The sources detail it so graphically.
It's probably the most disturbing part of the book. She was a fellow slave, someone he worked with. Epps became jealous, accused her of visiting another plantation.
And the punishment, the staking out.
Tied down naked to 4 stakes, Epps whipped her himself brutally, flayed her skin, threw salt water on the wounds, made others watch, even his own son.
And the sources note it happened on a Sunday, a beautiful day.
The long-term effect on her was crushing. Deep melancholy, lost spirit, nightmares, just silent suffering. That quote, "The only heaven for which I sigh is rest, eternal rest." It says everything about her despair.
Her story and just the daily grind under Epps, it really highlights what Northup says about freedom.
Yeah, that even the most supposedly ignorant slave knew exactly what freedom meant. It wasn't abstract.
It was controlling your own work, having your family safe, not living in constant fear of the whip with no recourse. They saw the difference.
Absolutely. And despite all this, the despair, the brutality, Solomon Northup never completely lost hope.
Though earlier attempts to get messages out had failed, right? Betrayed.
Yeah, which made trusting anyone incredibly hard. But then Bess arrived, the Canadian carpenter working for Epps.
Described as liberal, outspoken, but kind-hearted.
Right. Solomon was cautious, watched him, waited for the right moment.
And finally, he took the risk, told Bass everything.
His real identity, the kidnapping, his family in New York, begged him for help.
And Bass agreed.
He did. Suggested writing to Northup's friends in Sandy Hill, Parker, and Perry, or checking customs records. He mailed a letter for him.
But the wait. Northup describes it as agonizing. Weeks, months, no reply.
He nearly lost hope again. But Bass was committed. When his job ended, and still no word, he decided he'd travel north himself. Promised he would find help.
Bass really comes through. His actions start the rescue process.
Yeah, he eventually gets back to Louisiana, finds a lawyer in Marksville, John P. Waddell, a guy who, the sources say, hated kidnapping.
Waddell looked at the documents Bass had, understood the situation, offered to help.
Meanwhile, Bass's letters had finally reached New York. Henry B. Northup, the lawyer relative who'd gotten that first letter years ago, was appointed an agent by the governor.
Under that specific New York law from 1840 designed for these exact situations.
Right, so they gathered proof in New York. Affidavits from people who knew Solomon Josiah Hand, Timothy Eddy, Henry B. Northup, Nicholas C. Northup, all confirming he was freeborn, his family, the kidnapping, solid legal proof.
Armed with all that, Henry B. Northup and Waddell head to Louisiana, January 3rd, 1853.
They arrive at Epps's plantation. The sheriff is there, sees Solomon, verifies it's him. The sources mention the scars on his back, helping identify him. Grim.
Epps gets called into the fields. Solomon recognizes Henry Northup. Imagine that moment.
And Epps's reaction, pure rage at losing his property.
But the evidence was too strong. They met the next day in Marksville. Epps, his lawyer, Northup's lawyer, Waddell.
Epps's own lawyer told him it was useless to fight it. The proof was undeniable.
So Epps had to sign the papers, acknowledging Solomon was free, surrendering him. It was officially recorded.
And just like that, after 12 years, freedom. Legally, he was free.
He describes leaving Bayou Boeuf on a steamer, going up the Red River. The contrast with arriving there 12 years before must have been overwhelming.
Unimaginable. His journey north took him back through New Orleans. He actually saw Theophilus Freeman, the trader, just for a moment.
Wow. Then through Charleston, Richmond, back to Washington, D.C.
And he wasn't done fighting. In Washington, he immediately went after James H. Birch.
The slave trader who first bought and sold him, he pressed charges.
Yeah, there was a court hearing, January 1853, but the outcome, it tells you a lot about justice back then.
Birch's defense was just lies.
Complete fabrication. His associates, Thorne and Shekels, testified Solomon was born in Georgia, agreed to be sold, made up details about him gambling, justifying the illegal act.
But Solomon refuted it all.
Powerfully. Declared it all false, point by point. Said he just wanted justice for the burning sense of the wrong done to him.
And Birch was acquitted anyway.
Acquitted. Solomon was even briefly arrested himself afterwards, a final insult before Birch dropped it. Northup's reflection is telling. The human tribunal failed, but he still believed in a higher tribunal.
So from Washington, he finally heads home.
Yeah.
Back to Sandy Hill, seeing old friends, familiar places. Then Glens Falls.
And the reunion. The sources describe this incredibly emotional meeting with his wife Anne, his daughters Margaret and Elizabeth, after 12 years, the end of the fight, getting his life back.
So we followed this incredible, horrific journey. Through his own words, through the sources, his story is just so important. A true first-hand account that shocked people in 1853.
Absolutely. It influenced public opinion then, and it still resonates. Bestseller, major movie. The Goodreads reviews we saw show that. People saying, this is history we have to know, have to learn from, so it never happens again.
It's a vital record, a moral compass, and ultimately it's just this staggering testament to human resilience, isn't it?
Completely. That fundamental desire for liberty that kept him going through all those years.
It really is. And thinking about that ending, seeking justice, being let down by the court.
But still holding on to that belief in something higher, in the right to be free.
Yeah, that really stays with you.
It does. Despite everything, the failed human tribunal, the constant injustice, he kept that conviction, that belief in a higher justice, in inherent human dignity. What does that kind of steadfast belief forged in 12 years of hell tell us about, the real nature of human dignity and maybe the ongoing fight everywhere for equality and justice?
Definitely something to think about.